We face the Kinder Morgan pipeline not in our backyard, but in our kitchen. We were once able to harvest more than 90% of our diet from our land and waters, but we haven't been able to harvest any food since 1972. Charlene Aleck from the Indigenous Tsleil-Waututh Nation in Canada has traveled to Germany and Switzerland to tell bank managers how a big oil project they are financing is destroying her home. Since 1953, the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline has traced over 1,150 kilometers (710 miles) of Canadian land, from Alberta to the west coast of British Columbia, carrying 300,000 barrels of crude oil per day straight through the homeland of the Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. Kinder Morgan is proposing to build a new pipeline alongside this existing one, in order to triple the amount of crude oil being transported. The project was initially approved by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2016, but ongoing protests and lawsuits have temporarily put a hold on the construction. Aleck and 4 other Indigenous women from North America who are all affected by big oil projects were in Frankfurt, Germany, and Zurich, Switzerland, to meet face-to-face with managers from Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse and UBS. I came here to let the banks know that the risk is too great for our nation. We want to let them know that the company they are investing in does not have our consent, and we oppose them in any legal way possible, Aleck told DW. The planned second Trans Mountain pipeline would further damage the already degraded land of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Aleck says the meetings were organized by the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network (WECAN), with the goal to hold banks accountable for their investments. Women are standing up for their own territories, but also for the climate, for the water, for the forest, for the land. It's important to understand that women who protect their land also protect the climate, Osprey Oriel, executive director of WECAN, told DW. In light of climate change, fossil fuels must be kept in the ground, she says. And this is why we are asking banks to make the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Read more. The financial system killing environmental activists to combat climate change, increase women's participation. Growing movement. The Indigenous women are part of a growing fossil fuel divestment movement. Over the last years, more than 700 public institutions worldwide have already committed to divest, including educational institutions, philanthropic foundations and governments. A year ago, the German city of Göttingen has become the 4th German city that withdrew investment in coal, oil and gas companies. Earlier this year, New York City's pension fund announced it would pull around $5 billion (€4 billion) of its investments in fossil fuel companies. Norway's trillion-dollar sovereign wealth fund, the world's biggest, also proposed to drop oil and gas companies from its holdings, saying it already has enough exposure to the industry and wants to protect against fluctuating oil prices. The Norwegian government is set to decide in fall of 2018 about the divestment. The divestment movement has spread around the world. Also, a number of Catholic institutions have been the latest addition to the trend. The humanitarian aid organization Caritas Internationales, owned by the Catholic Church, and 3 German Catholic banks announced in mid-April they would withdraw investments worth $7.5 billion out of big oil. The Catholic banks are following the example of the Church of England, which divested from fossil fuel companies with the highest concentration of carbon companies after Pope Francis voiced in 2015 his concerns about climate change and the fossil fuel industry. Big money, big responsibility. Banks and other financial institutions play a major role in limiting global warming by shifting investments from fossil fuels toward renewable energies and other low-carbon endeavors. However, the fast-paced nature of the financial sector, with its quick and high turnarounds, is not exactly an environment that encourages divestment from fossil fuels. To this end, the United Nations Environment Programme has developed, together with several climate scientists and financial experts, a methodology to help banks understand how climate change and climate action could impact their business. UNEP Director Eric Solheim believes that the new methodology will help the finance industry change their perspective. He traces the environmental challenges of today back to short-termism. Financial markets can become a catalyst for action on sustainability, but for that they need to become more long-term oriented, he said in a statement presenting the methodology. The framework encourages organizations to consider and disclose long-term impacts, he added. The methodology allows banks and financial institutions to see into the future, predicting how the Paris Agreement, if implemented as planned, will change our economies. For example, investment in coal companies today won't make much sense when coal power plants are eventually shut down. If, on the other hand, governments push the renewable energy market to meet emissions reduction goals, investments in wind and solar parks promise a higher return. Elmar Kriegler, senior scientist at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research who was part of the team that developed the methodology, says that after computing for investment risks and opportunities in a 2-degree world, it's up to the banks to make use of this. Big money also means big responsibilities, Kriegler said in a statement. 16 banks from 4 continents, including Barclays, National Australia Bank and the Royal Bank of Canada, are currently testing and fine-tuning the methodology. The Indigenous women are hopeful that guidelines like these along with their continued pressure will get banks to eventually divest from big oil. Unprecedented heat waves swept across the globe in 2017, leading to droughts, wildfires and even deaths. Australia started the year with temperatures near 50 degrees Celsius (122 Fahrenheit). The Lucifer heat wave brought the mercury above 40 degrees Celsius throughout southern Europe in July and August, and scorching heat hit India's most vulnerable people. Get ready for next summer. Earlier this year, scientists realized that coral bleaching in Australia's Great Barrier Reef was worse than first thought. In some parts of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, up to 70% of the coral has already been killed. By 2050, scientists have warned 90% of the reef could disappear. Rising sea temperatures and ocean acidification are the main culprits. Armed conflicts are pushing millions of people to leave their homes or live in terribly precarious situations, and climate change is making it worse. A lack of natural resources increases the risk of conflict and makes life even harder for refugees. South Sudanese families, for instance, are escaping to neighboring countries like Uganda and Kenya, countries already suffering from drought. From New Zealand to Spain, from California to even Greenland, the world has seen a non-stop year of wildfires. Global warming has been blamed for the increased fire risk, and in some countries that risk has turned into reality. Wildfires engulfed large areas of Europe's Iberian Peninsula, causing death and destruction, while firefighters in California have had no rest for more than 6 months. Hurricanes Maria and Irma, which hit the Caribbean region in August and September, were 2 of the year's most damaging weather events. The list of deadly storms also included Ophelia in Ireland, Harvey and Nate in Central America in the US, and Xavier and Sebastian in Germany. Warming of the ocean surface has led to more evaporation, and that water may help fuel thunderstorms and hurricanes. In July, one of the largest icebergs ever recorded separated from the Larsen Sea ice shelf, one of Antarctica's biggest, reducing its area by more than 12%. While calving icebergs in the Antarctic are part of a natural cycle, scientists have linked the retreat of several Antarctic ice shelves to global warming and are closely monitoring potential long-term effects. Deteriorating air quality causes thousands of deaths around the world every year. India's capital, New Delhi, is one of the world's most polluted cities. In November, large parts of northern India and Pakistan were engulfed by a blanket of thick smog carrying harmful particulate matter. Schools were forced to close, and hospitals were full of people with respiratory problems. The high levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere represent a major threat for our oceans, already in danger due to plastic pollution, overfishing and warming waters. Ocean acidification could make these waters, covering more than 2/3 of our planet's surface, a hostile environment for sea creatures. And without marine animals, entire ocean ecosystems are at risk. Superstorms often trigger flash floods and mudslides. In late December, more than 230 people were killed when a storm hit the Philippines' second-largest island of Mindanao, a tragedy exacerbated by years of deforestation. In 2017, severe floods also hit countries such as Vietnam, Peru and Sierra Leone. European countries, including Greece and Germany, also felt the damaging effects of heavy rain. Author Irene Bonos Ruiz